Have you ever wondered what kind of person hides behind the most famous paintings? How they lived their life, the bizarre habits they had, their rude behaviors? Anything? Well, get ready to discover some of the secrets of famous artists. Salvador Dali thought he was his dead brother. Dali's paintings are among the most striking, strange, and beautiful of all time. They are intricate, rich in symbolism, and extremely strange. His most famous painting is The Persistence of Memory, and the melting clocks in it became a sensation when it was hung on the wall of an art gallery in New York City. Dali was one of the most bizarre figures in the history of art. He walked down the street with his beloved ocelot, stole pens from fans who had signed autographs for him, and published his own cookbook. Most bizarre of all, Dali believed he was the son of his dead brother. Dali's parents brought him to his brother's grave when he was 5 years old to share their theory. Dali's older brother, also known as Salvador, died 9 months before Dali was born. His parents were convinced that their second son was their first son. Dali grew to believe this, and his past self makes several dark and mysterious appearances in his work, including a prominent role in one of his paintings, Portrait of My Dead Brother. Leonardo da Vinci was a dilly-dallier. One of the most renowned artists of all time is undoubtedly Leonardo da Vinci. However, one of the things that made him such a great artist was his tendency to quickly take a break from his work. Despite being considered a Renaissance man, Leonardo tended to abandon unfinished work. Evidence of this can be seen in the hundreds of handwritten notes and sketches that he left behind for commissions after his death in 1519. Two of his most famous works took a total of 17 years to finish. He worked on his grand mural, The Last Supper, for 3 years, and then spent 14 years finishing the famous Mona Lisa, which is said to have only been completed after his patron threatened to stop his funding. Picasso had 27 names and a gun. Pablo Picasso is considered to be one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. His painting, Guernica, is widely regarded as one of the greatest anti-war paintings ever painted, and Women of Algiers sold for a record-breaking $179 million at an auction in 2015. At the time of his death in 1973, Picasso's net worth was estimated to be $250 million, and when adjusted for inflation, it would now be worth more than $1 billion. All of that money probably went to his head, because Picasso was a very violent man. He liked to carry a pistol around with him and pointed at anyone who displeased him. He had several mistresses in his life and was not immune to domestic abuse. Perhaps some of his anger came from the fact that he had a very long name. As a final middle finger to his family, he did not leave a will, leaving his wives, ex-wives, and children, both legitimate and illegitimate, to fight over his fortune for years in messy legal battles. Michelangelo never bathed. Michelangelo is widely regarded as one of the world's greatest painters and sculptors. His work decorates the ceiling of Rome's Sistine Chapel. David of Michelangelo is perhaps the most famous sculptor of all time. The Vatican commissioned Michelangelo to create works of art for the tombs and cathedrals of popes across Rome and Florence. However, Michelangelo was said to have a very bad stench all the time. He was also said to have hated bathing and would go to bed with his clothes on and his shoes on. It is said that when he took his shoes off, the skin from his feet sometimes came along with it. The origin of this habit is said to have come from his father, who wrote to Michelangelo urging him to take care of his health by abstaining from soap and water and instead rubbing himself from time to time. And Michelangelo seems to have taken this advice very seriously. When Michelangelo passed away, his clothes had to be taken off because he had been wearing them for so long. This was in the 1500s, and even at the time, this was considered pretty gross. As the saying goes, with great art comes great oddities. Some of an artist's oddities are funny and sweet, while others are deadly serious. Vermeer's crazy art forger. The 17th century Dutch artist, Johannes Vermeer, was renowned for his use of color and light to portray the lives of the middle class. Vermeer's work is so valuable that many art forgers have sought to capitalize on his reputation. One such forger was Han van Meegeren, a failed artist from Delft, the same Dutch city that Vermeer lived in. Van Meegen's own art career began to suffer in the early 20th century, so he turned to forging works by Vermeer and other Dutch painters. He was profiting handsomely from his forgeries, which would now be worth millions of dollars, enabling him to live a lavish lifestyle and sustain a debilitating drug addiction. The quality of his forgeries was so good that in 1942, the Nazis liked them so much that they bought one of them. Hitler's right-hand man, Hermann Göring, bought one of his forgeries. He thought it was a genuine Vermeer, but when Allied forces found it in 1945, it was traced back to Van Meegeren, and he was accused of looting Dutch cultural treasures and collaborating with the Nazis. The charge carried a death penalty sentence. In a bizarre twist, he pleaded guilty to forgery instead of the death penalty in front of the Dutch court. It is said that his forgeries were so good that he had to show them to a Dutch court, painting Jesus among the doctors in front of court-appointed witnesses. He was spared the death penalty after that, but at the same time, that painting became his final forgery. He died shortly after of a heart attack caused by drugs and alcohol while awaiting a new sentence. Pablo Picasso didn't steal the Mona Lisa. Pablo Picasso did many things in his life, including being a sculptor, a painter, and a playwright. But there is one thing that historians don't mention about him. He was accused of being an art burglar. The Mona Lisa of Leonardo da Vinci was stolen from the Louvre on August 21, 1911. 8 days later, a man named Joseph G. Pierret told the Paris journal he and Picasso, along with his friend and fellow poet, Apollinaire, owned Iberian art stolen properties. This accusation put Picasso in the spotlight as one of the main suspects in the theft of Leonardo's art. Apollinaire and Picasso were both in court for their involvement in the theft. However, there was no evidence linking them to the theft, and they were eventually released. To Picasso's delight, the Mona Lisa reappeared in Florence, Italy in December 1913. What's more, it was one of the Louvre workers, a man known as Vincenzo Perugia, who stole the painting to bring it back to its native Italy. Caravaggio was a bad man. Caravaggio was an Italian painter of the 16th century. He was known for his use of dramatic lighting and shadows to create dark and emotional scenes that brought his characters to life. He painted only about 90 pieces, but these paintings are worth millions of dollars. His dark style was a reflection of his personality. He had a volatile temper and was frequently involved in drunken brawls, going to court at least 10 times while living in Rome. He also enjoyed attacking people with swords, which got him into a lot of trouble, and may have been the inspiration for the painting, Judith Beheading Holofernes, a scene in which a woman disfigures a man with a sword. He was also known to have thrown candles in a waiter's face and threw stones at policemen. In 1605, Caravaggio's life began to deteriorate. His landlord confiscated all of his furniture because he could not pay for it, and he accidentally punctured himself with his sword. Caravaggio also killed a man in May 1606. The man's name is unknown, but he was known to have been a tennis player. Some believe it was a quarrel over a match, while others believe they were fighting over an escort. Either way, he killed the man, either by sword or knife. Caravaggio was sentenced to death by the Pope, but he managed to escape and lived on the streets of Rome for several years. He then went to Malta, where he again attacked a high-ranking military officer. He was sent to prison, but he escaped from there and made his way to Naples. He then used his connections to get a pardon back to Rome, but he died before he could make it back to Rome. The mysterious death of Vincent van Gogh. A prolific artist, Vincent van Gogh produced 900 paintings and countless other sketches in just 10 years. That's roughly one painting every 36 hours. Unfortunately, he was unable to sell most of these works during his lifetime. He lived a life of poverty and was constantly on the brink of mental collapse. After a short stay in a psychiatric hospital, he moved to the village of Auvers, close to Paris, where he drank heavily and stayed at an inn where he continued to paint. His mental state began to deteriorate rapidly, and those close to him began to worry. He also spent much of his time with two 16-year-olds, which was unusual for a 37-year-old struggling artist. One of these children, named René, began to bully Van Gogh. Rumors say that René added salt to his coffee, chili powder to his paint, and that she carried a gun around with him. On the day of the shooting, Van Gogh arrived at the inn with a bullet wound to the abdomen, claiming his painting supplies had been stolen. Van Gogh was rushed to the hospital where he died of an infection 36 hours later. His doctor, Dr. Paul Gachet, said it was a suicide, but no one knew how an unstable artist could have acquired a gun. Van Gogh remained mysterious on his deathbed, saying only, "Don't blame anyone, I wanted to kill myself." He did not say who did it, but neither did the townspeople. René stopped carrying a gun shortly afterward. Did Van Gogh shoot the legendary artist? Or did he take the gun and kill himself? We may never know. But of course, it doesn't end with the artist, as he transmits a part of himself to his artworks, so don't miss the great mysteries hidden in famous paintings. Thank you for watching the video, and if you like this video, please press the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.